get the chance. Better men than you've been let this dance. So go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me.
Good. I'm not going to say it, Allan. Well, hello and welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast in association with the Scottish Rugby Blog. I'm Craig Manson, and welcome to the live stream. And also, if you're not live streaming, you'll be listening to us while you're walking your dog, or you're driving to work, or you're driving home from work, or if you are in the outside world and all around, not in Scotland, you can listen to us, and I hope you're doing well and you're going to enjoy this tonight, because we've got some fantastic things to chat about, and a couple of fantastic guests. Well, maybe three. I'll call them three fantastic guests, contributors, whatever you want to call them. Johnny's given me a bit of a look, so I'm going to start. But sorry, we're a little bit late starting. If you're watching the live stream, we were just held back a bit because we had to deal with Jonny had to deal with his court-mandated online wellness course. So he was having to deal with that. It's basically tackle school for teachers. So I hope you're doing all right. So good evening, Jonny. Glad to see you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here now that I'm finished. That honestly could not be further from what my job is like, by the way. I don't want to get too much into how much I hate this. I nearly did a swear already. How I feel about this online wellness course that I'm participating in, but 3 weeks left.
And fresh from being recognised as one of Popeye's arch enemies, Allan McDonald. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Craig.
And all the way from the colonies, one of the best human beings around, and someone who we listen to, we sometimes go and visit now and then on his podcast, and it's great to have him back. David Lawrence from the Scrum AF Pod. David, how are you doing, my friend?
Great to see everybody. Thanks so much for having me back. It's always a super blast. I apologize to regular listeners who will know this is the spot where I usually have a joke lined up to make Craig feel uncomfortable and take him off his game, and I came up empty this week. I tried. There's no good motorcycle jokes out there.
Well, I'm sure. Well, it's nice to hear you've actually moved away from the vacuum jokes, and we're now, we've got away from that, and we're.
It was so much easier then.
Yeah, it seemed to be. It was a time that sucked for me quite a lot, but
that was one of them.
Manson. What a disappointing start.
What a disappointing start. Well, it's going to get worse, Jonny. So, in celebration of having David on our pod, I was just working on some tariffs within the the rugby game that we have here over in this side of the world, and they're the biggest tariffs, they're the greatest tariffs. What we give and what they give, and we start with Ireland. We saved them the time and bother of holding a World Cup. So that's what we helped with, and they call us arrogant and ask Matt Williams to comment on everything. So it's very nice of them to do that. So that's the come and go from Ireland. Wales, we are showing them the way of how to cut a region very, very quickly and painlessly, and they give us constant opportunity to discuss the bin fire that is Welsh rugby. So it's quite a nice. What's the word? We give and take on both sides of things. And then England, I kind of gave up with England because there wasn't very much to say about England. We give them continual pain when they get too big for their boots, but and they give us something to laugh at. So I suppose those are the comings and goings and the tariffs and the payments that go between the rugby nations over this side of the water.
I love that you just tapped your sheets there like an old school newsreader. That was
That was very like SNL news desk kind of.
I'm just what I'm trying to do is actually be kind of like what's the word? As if I know what I'm doing, and I don't. Everyone that listens to this knows that I'm trying to be professional, and it never works. So our podcast is part of the sports social network. Don't forget to give us a follow or a like on your favourite podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to give us a follow on social media. You can find all of the links on our site, www.scottishrugbyblog.co.uk. If you're listening on Apple and like what we do, well, if you can afford to buy an Apple device in the next wee while, and you like what we do, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like more content and want to support what we do, you can subscribe to our Patreon from just £3 plus of that a month, and that gives you access to our super secret Facebook group. We've not got Ian Hay on tonight to tell you what that name is because it's not super secret. Ian Hay. And the second part of tonight's podcast, as well as Patreon exclusives, that's the professional bit, you see, because Rory wrote that and I read that out. So that's actually quite professional.
It wasn't professional enough because there was no of your papers when you're finished.
There you go. Yeah. So
if you start clicking your pen compulsively, that would be great.
Well, I haven't. I've got a really smelly Sharpie that I did all my notes in today, and I'll tell you what. Forget all these painkillers I've been on for my back. These Sharpies are fabulous.
You wrote your notes in Sharpie?
Well, I needed to make them bigger, Johnny, because I'm getting old, mate.
On a wall, like a serial killer. Yeah,
on a wall like a serial killer.
On the red string behind you, Craig. That's
it all makes sense.
At least, or if we're talking about a TV program, it's like just having a big version of these cue cards, But anyway, so we'll move on and we'll get some more information out of our contributors stroke guests. I don't know what to call you guys sometimes. I just definitely want a guest from David.
Heroes. That's what you call us.
Heroes. Okay, heroes, right.
You know what you call us off camera anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't mind just as long as you don't call me over. Anyway, that's an old one. That's one of my father's. My goodness. Anyway, news. We start with news and Ali Price and Dave Cherry are leaving Edinburgh.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, they have. They're going to they're going to take up opportunities abroad, and I think one I don't actually know, but we thought that Dave Cherry was heading over to Montpellier. I sorted out.
Ali Price, Montpellier, Dave Cherry van.
Right.
Which made a lot more sense.
What has he done? I didn't realize that he was an international criminal.
Well,
that bit made a lot more sense the other way around.
It did. Dave Cherry heading off to Montpellier did make a lot more sense, but I think it's to do with his big giant rabbit. I'm not sure, Johnny. So Johnny, Ali Price, did Edinburgh break him? Do we think we might see him get a bit better, or what?
I don't know. I think maybe Ali Price is just quite old now. Like this. There's a lot about Ali Price in Hands of the Ruck, but actually in defence of Ali Price, we'll come to it in the Patreon. But I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on there. Like he wasn't having his best time at Glasgow when he left to go to Edinburgh, and he then sort of somehow got a lot worse when he got to Edinburgh. And I don't think there's any one person to blame. I think it's just not the right player and not the right situation, to be honest. I think he probably will do better at Montpellier. I don't think he's going to become the Ali Price of 7 or 8 years ago. But I don't think Edinburgh was the situation for him. I don't think he particularly wanted to be there. I'm not convinced Edinburgh really wanted to have him. So I think it was kind of cursed from the start, to be honest. And we'll see. Montpellier might be a bit of a rejuvenation for him.
So you're saying that for Edinburgh, the price was wrong rather than the price is right?
Could you please stop that?
I tell you, I think if we're going to get, if we're going to get someone with a hook in, it's going to be Allan and his incredibly bad puns. It seems to be, they might be. They're all right, actually. I suppose it depends which side you come down on.
Am I the only one?
I just keep making them.
Am I the only one who wants Montpellier to really lean into the bad guy image? Like their training facilities should look kind of Mad Maxy. There should be like barrels with fires in them and like mysterious people huddled around with fingerless leather gloves and stuff.
You just want Hoggy to be standing in the middle of the sand pit and going, "Are you not entertained?"
Exactly.
I want him to be the one that's
got an eye
trapped in
patch for
front of
some
the car
reason.
in Fury Road.
Good to see you, Ali.
I know that the new stadium's in an extinct volcano and just right in the middle of that.
I forgot who's the Simpson character that was the
Hank Scorpio.
Hank Scorpio.
That's it, yeah, Hank Scorpio. That's the Elon Musk of this.
Nobody ever says Italy.
Yeah. So yeah, I wonder who'd do the Tina Turner song though in Montpellier.
The owner of Montpellier should always have a cat and just be petting it. Oh, welcome, Mr. Price.
Welcome, Mr. Price, and I do believe you will be walking home from Paris at some point because you'll be shit. I've even sworn as well. So there we go. Anyway. Yeah, nice. Anyway, Allan, Dave Cherry. Did we save Dave Cherry? This is the question. Edinburgh seemed to have really rejuvenated. He did a great. He came on board to Edinburgh, did an incredibly good job. Then kind of started to drift off when he went to Scotland, and then had his ignominious departure from the Edinburgh school. Yeah, whatever you want to say. Yeah, you say potato, I say potato. He decided that he had a concussion that ruled him out of the whole of the rest of the World Cup, all 4 or 5 weeks of it. But he seems to have come back and saved Scotland's hooking. What's the word? Embarrassment over the Six Nations. Have we saved Dave Cherry and rejuvenated him?
I think he rehabilitated his reputation a wee bit on the field anyway, didn't he? Because actually he was the bright light for us at hooker, particularly because Ewan Ashman wasn't at his best. I think even Ewan Ashman's mum would say he wasn't at his best in the Six Nations. It was a funny tournament because for hookers, Dylan Richardson cemented his place as first choice without touching a ball, having been injured for the whole tournament. I think. So I think Edinburgh probably did rehabilitate Dave Cherry. Dave Cherry played pretty well for them, got himself back into Scotland reckoning. Obviously with George Turner heading off to Japan, there was a bit of a gap with Harrison and Grant Stewart being on the young side and not wanting to rush them in. So I think Cherry has done well, and you can't grudge him his payday in France.
Yeah.
Presuming he's going to play for Van and not live in his van. That's the.
Well, you could probably do both if you imagine. Well, Darcy Graham was maybe letting him his camper
good enough for Darcy.
Yeah, it's good enough for Darcy. So, but and David, of those two players that have obviously become Edinburgh stalwarts, well, okay, Dave Cherry's become an Edinburgh stalwart. Anything come to mind with yourself if you've watched them and playing over the time?
Oh, yes. So, on my little show, The Scrum of the Earth, I've been talking about Dave Cherry, referring to him as the Stairman of the Board for quite a while. But I got to shout out Dr. Harley Worthy, who I was telling him, I was very proudly telling him, I came up with this nickname. And he said, I've just been calling him Slinky. And I realized, sometimes you got to admit when you're beaten, that's so much better. But yeah, he looks completely rejuvenated. It reminded, like when just before the 2019 World Cup, everyone was saying, "Oh, Peter O'Mahony, he's washed up, it's over." And then he went down and had a great tournament and has been almost better since then. And of course, maybe we're seeing the end of that now, but I feel like Dave Cherry had that same kind of inexplicable rejuvenation. And so, yeah, maybe it's probably got to do with Scott Matthew being the attacks coach there. I just, even though he's front rower, somehow it's got to be Scott Matthew, right?
Yeah, there's got to be a
Yeah,
few
because
jacks
Edinburgh's
there.
attack's been fantastic, so
Yes.
that'll definitely be all right.
So
More on
nobody
that
would mention
later,
that,
I'm
but
sure.
okay.
Yeah, more on that later. But yeah, I think the current Mrs. Manson used to call him the housewife's favourite, and he really seemed to be a real stalwart for Edinburgh. But the Ali Price experiment, if we're going to go down that route, hasn't really worked, I don't think. And so it's a real difference of them both leaving. It's a real yin and yang, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But moving on, Edinburgh are splashing, nay, dancing around in the Ali Price money that he has released by signing over to France. Dylan Richardson is joining Edinburgh, and Jonny, are Edinburgh going to break him?
I mean, based on the evidence of the last couple of seasons, you'd say it's more likely than not. I really hope not, because Scotland could really do with a decent hooker, and he's looked pretty good in the chances that he's had. He looked good both at hooker and at back row for the Sharks. He's a fairly exciting prospect. He's obviously he's tabbed for Scotland. He was in the squad before he got injured. I would really like Edinburgh to not Ben Healy him, to be honest.
Yeah, and David, Dylan Richardson really showed up on the North American tour last year when he came out. And what was the result against the USA, David?
I'm pretty sure that fixture was canceled. I don't think it actually went ahead as scheduled. I think they sent you straight. I think you weren't allowed to enter the country and were sent straight to Central and South America.
Yeah. But you've watched the players, especially because you watch a lot of rugby within you watch a lot of South African and New Zealand rugby as well. Have you seen Dylan Richardson play, and what's your thoughts on him?
I have no thoughts on him. I'm vaguely aware of him. I wish I had been prepared for this and I could have looked up something funny, but I'm sure he's fine. Yeah.
Well, it's a great point. I apologise to David on this podcast, because David is, when you go into David's podcast, you're very, very, very well prepared and sent information prior to coming on. And unfortunately, David has just come on because he's been given absolutely nothing from me. So I just it's been a week.
But how come he gets an apology, but we put up with this every week for nothing?
Because
I'm on the other side of the ocean. Jeez.
Yeah, and I have to put up with you hosting now and then, Jonny. So come on.
So when you started talking about this, though, I thought you were going with the news because it was only like 5 hours ago. Ben Healy has re-signed, and Ross Thompson's re-signed, and who's the local
Cammy
guy?
Scott.
Cammy, yeah.
Well,
they re-signed three.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize for jumping the gun there.
No,
three fly-offs.
If you had the schedule, David, you would have known that was coming
It's
up.
a host off. I love it.
Just had the schedule. Thanks, Allan. I appreciate it. I'm going to just huff now. Absolutely huff. But yeah, we've got Ross Thompson, Ben Healy, and Cammy Scott have all re-signed. So all the 10s have re-signed, and
Is Cammy the real deal? Are you guys happy with him?
Well, I'll put it to Allan. Allan, have you seen much of Cammy Scott?
I will have to confess my ignorance of Cammy Scott. I haven't seen much of him play, but I'm pleased he's coming through with two good 10s ahead of him, just so that he doesn't get absolutely ruined and sort of Chamberlain, shall we say. So,
yeah, well,
Nathan Chamberlain wasn't treated well by Edinburgh. The circumstances at Edinburgh.
Yeah. Well, I think actually the Ross Thompson has worked incredibly well, and Jonny, Ross Thompson came through from Glasgow, and he was, let's remember, he was third in line Scottish 10 behind Blair Kinghorn and
just ahead of Finn Russell.
just ahead of Finn Russell, etc. At that time, and he seems to have really invigorated. Well, when I say invigorated attack at Edinburgh, but he has brought in the crossfield kick, etc. It's something that has been quite missing. But Ben Healy, Jonny, we thought a lot of people in Glasgow were hoping that Ben Healy was going to be driving along the M8 and bolstering the 10s at the other end of the M8.
Yeah, like you want to speak about people that haven't been looked after well by Edinburgh. If I was Ben Healy, there's not a snowball's chance that I'd be signing for another year there unless he knows something that we don't know about what's going to happen with the coaching staff next season, because like he genuinely was when he moved to Edinburgh, like all joking aside, he was Scotland's second choice 10. He was behind Finn Russell because Adam Hastings was injured. The Blair Kinghorn experiment was over. Ross Thompson was a bit out of favour. Tom Jordan hadn't qualified yet. It was Finn and Ben Healy, and he's now. I mean, the last time we saw him was playing for Edinburgh A. So that sign and an extension, unless there's something else going on, does not make any sense to me. Especially not to like cry and make it about us or whatever, but Glasgow are going to be very short of 10s next year. So Edinburgh re-signing 3 Scottish 10s when, you know, Ali Price, part of the reason that Ali Price ended up going over was that Edinburgh fans kicked off about Scotland having, Glasgow having all the Scotland scrum halves. And so Ali Price came over and we kept George Horn and Jamie Dobie. Now Edinburgh are keeping 3 Scottish qualified 10s, 2 of them who have been in the Scotland system previously, who have been working as backups previously. Glasgow are losing Tom Jordan. We don't know how much of Duncan Weir we've got left. Adam Hastings can't keep himself fit. And Ben Healy, not to beat around the bush, has been treated terribly by Sean Everett at Edinburgh. And so for him to stay there for another year, I don't know, that makes very little sense to me.
But he's really grown into that 22 jersey.
Yeah, and he's also been really helping out the Edinburgh A team as well, taking them and showing them around some of the darker parts of Scotland.
I have Ben Healy's quote after he signed from today. I don't know if you saw it. He says, "I've loved my time at Edinburgh Rugby so far, and I'm really happy to extend my stay for another year. I feel like I've developed since joining from Munster and still have a lot more to give." Yeah, probably a lot, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the quote of a man to whom certain assurances have been given, I would think.
Or no other deal is available. There is that as well. But I think, and also you've got to think of Ben Healy. You know, if you remember when he first came to Edinburgh 2 seasons ago, Edinburgh would have been in a worse place without Ben Healy because he kicked a lot of points for them. Yeah. So for me, it's as Jonny says. I think he has been, whether he spoke the truth or the untruth to Sean Everett, which is rumoured. You know, he hasn't deserved really to be enticed over by Gregor Townsend and come over and we'll give you a Scotland start and we'll give you, you'll play regularly for Edinburgh, etc. And then all of a sudden disappears completely from all of it, and he's not even getting the chance to go and train with Scotland at the moment. And you know, it's been a difficult thing. So all I can do is wish him well. I really do hope that he gets more opportunities next season with Edinburgh because I do like him. I actually think he's a great player.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. Only 2 starts this year and 5 times not in the 23 in the URC.
Yeah. It's just been quite something. So yeah, good luck to him, and good luck to the other 2 guys. I think, as I say, Cammy Scott is quite an exciting talent coming through. And then Ross Thompson. Well, Ross Thompson's getting better every week, so it should be interesting for Edinburgh. Well, it can't get any worse for Edinburgh, to be perfectly honest. But last thing in this, and it'll be maybe a lengthy chat, so we will have a quick chat about this and see where we are. This week, a study by Edinburgh Uni, commissioned by Scottish Rugby, says that lowering tackle height reduces the rate of head-on-head contact by 45%. It's the first of 3 studies carried out within the 23 to 24 season. David, who knew? If you actually bend at the hips, you're not going to, you're not going to get so many head-on-head collisions.
Yeah, this came from the Institute of Duh. We knew that. I'm not. I'm not convinced it qualifies as news. Getting hit in the head less turns out to be better for your head. Huh? It took a team of scientists hired by the SRU to figure that out, but it's more brilliant work by them. But I mean, it's a fact. These things are changing the way people play. It's changing the complexion of the game. It's making it safer. Like it's never going to be safe, but like these are good things. And I only, we'll get to it in the second half because this is part of my hands in the ruck. But if this knowledge gets all the way down to New Zealand, then the sport could be in a better place.
Well, you never know. There are things that, well, as we know within the UK, or England and Great Britain, we tend to take the slow boat to Australia, New Zealand, and things eventually get put down there, but they're usually not that nice. But anyway,
things come up the other way really quickly, like 20-minute red cards and that kind of stuff. Somehow the flow is really swift in one direction, but a little slower in the other.
Yeah, the boats we send down there have usually got unsavouries on them, I suppose. I don't know. We sent the good ones. We sent the good ones over to the west, and the other ones. Anyway, that's a different story. But Jonny, you still play regularly, and they're saying that sanctions related to tackle height tripled, and I can understand it's tripled, but you've been playing, so you'll. I don't know if you have been. I know for a fact you've been someone who's dealt with a bad concussion a couple of times, but has this been good for Scottish club rugby? How do you find how is this brought on? Because there's been a lot of complaints about it as well.
Yeah, in like a head spinning act of people working out how to use this new law trial to their advantage. I think it was the second week of pre-season last year when they first brought those law trials in that we all discovered that attack coaches or coaches across all of the leagues had basically been telling all their players, if it looks like someone's going to come and tackle you, duck. And we'll get them pinged for a high tackle. So people were crouching as they were going into contact and getting hit above the sternum, which like they would previously not have done because we knew that there was penalties coming down for a high tackle if you did that. So like that was rapid. That I mean, like I say, it took 2 weeks for people to start doing that. So it was a bit of a wrinkle for the first few weeks of last season. I think it's better now. I think it's just one of those things now that we just accept is happening. And I actually think that the tackle height has got a lot, like noticeably got a lot better, even down in sort of like grassroots level. And it's not had these like drastic effects on the game that we thought it was going to have. Because initially when it got brought in, there was people saying all sorts of horror stories or scare stories about we weren't going to be able to defend anymore. Every game was going to end up 75-0. You couldn't target the ball. You couldn't choke tackle. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do that. And actually, a lot of it's still getting done. It's just getting done a little bit more safely. They tweaked how the law trials were going because obviously they added the bit about it didn't count down at the goal line. If you were picking going on the goal line and you were coming from a low drive to try and get over the goal line, then you could meet that drive. You wouldn't get pinged for that. And sort of little bits and pieces about the second tackler and things, which meant that we were still able to go, your second man could target the ball and stuff. So it's not made the terrifying changes to the game that we thought it was going to make. And I think it has made the tackle a lot better. So for me, I think it's gone really well.
So on the grassroots, it seems to be working. But Allan, has this spoiled the show? It seems to be within professional rugby, there are a lot of people who feel that all these new regulations on tackle height, etc., has options to spoil the show.
Yeah, because there was a weekend full of rugby and not one of the games was entertaining, was it? It was just absolutely, they were all absolutely dreadful, and frankly, I don't know why we're still watching it. No, I look, rugby has to get safer. Yeah, it has to mitigate the risk as much as it possibly can. And it has to be seen to be doing its best to do that. I don't think there's lots of pearl clutching and sort of horrified, and that's it, the game's gone. But it's not. I think it's a nonsense. And we need the game to exist, because what else are we going to do on a Thursday evening, gentlemen? But I think also there's an element whereby, and we are laughing at the Ministry of the Bleeding Obvious about the study result, but sometimes you make a change and it doesn't actually help. Sometimes what your prima facie case, your null hypothesis of your study is, turns out to be not the case. And you've got folks saying, well, there's no evidence that lowering the tackle height improves things. So now we have evidence. We've got something to put it on. Obviously, it's not the world's most revolutionary study outcome, but I think it's necessary as part of the work, and then we need to move on from there. But the other thing about tackle heights is you're starting to hear people talk about, you remember Bill Mata's tackle on George Ford a few weeks ago, and everyone's like, oh, what a great tackle. And actually, we're now starting to hear people going, oh, look, it was a legal tackle, but I don't think it was a great tackle, because he's coming in fast and a couple of degrees off, and suddenly it's a red card and a lengthy ban. So we're starting to hear that narrative come through, and I think that's good.
Yeah. And David, America, obviously, football in America was a leader in this, and especially the studies when it comes to concussion, etc. Now, I know that this is a rugby show, and when Ian starts going off on one about our type of football, I start to snore and get bored with him. But when we talk
That's
about
because soccer is boring.
Well, but American soccer, American football, they brought in significant changes, and always the concern with tackle heights and concussions and etc. within rugby in the UK has been grassroots players and children playing. Has there been a big shift in America with football, or it seems to be in rude health? There seems to be a lot of people still playing it. Is that the case, or does it change?
Oh yes, it kind of ebbs and flows, and there was a decrease in players for a while at the really young age, because parents were seeing all these studies about CTE and the effects of, repeated head injuries and stuff. The technology in the helmets is much better now. Like they have done a lot. It's true, but it's one of the fundamental differences where, like, the whole thing about tackle height, they don't talk about that in the NFL, because you can use your body as a projectile in the NFL to just spear somebody and just knock them down. You don't have to wrap. There's no talk about where it is. You can just turn yourself into a human spear and hit somebody in the sternum and put them on the ground, and that's totally fine. But rugby's statistically a safer sport, because people are sort of self-regulating those hits. You're not going to turn yourself into a projectile in rugby. First of all, you're going to get pinged for it, but also it's not effective. And you're not wearing a helmet, so you're not going to want to do that. But the NFL, it's one of the things that's most different about it, is that you're kind of, I don't know if you know about this, so in the NFL, some players have really long hair. You see the sort of braids coming out underneath the helmet. It's perfectly legal to tackle somebody by their braids if they have braids hanging out. You can grab them by the hair and pull them to the ground. They're like, well, you know what? You chose to have long hair. Guess what? That's tough. Obviously, you can't grab somebody by the hair in rugby. So, there's just such a fundamental difference. And yet, rugby is still a safer sport. I had a great opportunity to talk to Alex Magleby, who's the CEO of the Free Jacks, and he was saying what a difficult thing it is right now in America, where rugby's trying to sell itself. And it would be nice to be able to let parents know, hey, guess what? Your kid is going to be safer if they start playing rugby than if they start playing American-style football. And there's a lot of other reasons, too. Like, in American football, if they identify you as a skill position player, then you're somebody who might be the quarterback or might be a wide receiver or running back. Everybody else, you never get to touch the ball again. You're never touching the ball. If you're a defensive player, you never get to practice running the ball. You're never going to run with the ball in a game. There's a lot of things that are appealing like that, but it's really hard to tell American parents, hey, I know you just learned about all the dangers of these head injuries and CTE. We'd like your kid to play a sport that's roughly similar, but they're not wearing a helmet. It's a really hard. Parents are like, wait a sec, you just told us how dangerous this is, and now you're saying do it without padding and helmets. It's a really weird place we're in right now.
But
I think unless you've done both.
Interesting one though, because I'm sorry, Johnny, but the helmet is a false sense of security. Concussion is essentially it's not the impact to your head, directly on your head.
The brain inside
the helmet. It's your brain rattling about inside the bone box and sort of like coup and contra coup injuries. It rattles. These are technical terms. Stop me if I'm getting too technical. But that's the helmet doesn't stop the rattling. It stops potential skull fracture. It stops potential skull fracture. Stops cuts. It stops bruises, but not the concussion.
Well, that's why it's
the helmet helps very little.
Sorry, go ahead.
And actually, helmets are heavy. Like if you get knocked backwards and you've got a helmet on, it hurts. Like it's really painful. But like Alan's absolutely spot on. Like once you've got your kit on, you're a bit like I could do what I want. And I think unless you've done both, it's really difficult to tell people how different they are. Like we spoke about this the other week when we were speaking about jumping at the tackle. When I used to play football, I used to love people try to jump over me because I'm just going to smash out there. Like you're now not anchored to the ground and there's nothing to hold me back once I hit you. So I'm going to knock you out of the air. In rugby, like that's never going to be allowed. And it's a fairly fundamental difference. And like David says, it all comes down to the way that the things that you're allowed to do, the way that you're allowed to do them. And it's really difficult to tell people who have only ever played football that actually rugby is safer and in a lot of cases not as painful.
Yeah.
And so then the question then becomes, and we talk about what's the word? Idols in the sport and people who are going to teach our kids how to play rugby and people to look up to. And then we have issues with bunkers, downgrading, head knocks down to yellow cards, etc. We have red cards being given out that are only 20-minute red cards, and all for the sake of the show. And we're not actually considering what's going on and how it works further down the park into the grassroots rugby. And that's where I find it very, very difficult to put the two and two together, because really for me it's an awful lot of broadcasters, especially broadcasters, so they're the ones that seem to talk about it a hell of a lot of the time, are putting money and the show ahead of, still putting them ahead of the safety of players, and that's my big concern. And whether I can guarantee that England and Ireland and Wales won't be looking at this study because they didn't commission it, and that's the concern. And if they could actually, this study's meant to be part of a larger study that World Rugby is putting out there, and I would think I would have more hope for it if World Rugby weren't as toothless as they are. And that's my big concern with everything. So we'll have to see how that goes. Just before we finish up on the free to air side of things, the last thing, we'll keep the horrible things to the end. Jonny Henkel-Venter, 6-week ban. I've seen the footage. I've seen that the hand does go to the face. I'm not entirely sure and I guess that's why the ban is 6 weeks rather than a far bigger ban. It wasn't a fully conclusive gouge or rake, is it?
Yeah, no, and the thing about the footage is I would like to see exactly what Dan Cole was doing other than hold him in a headlock. Now, that doesn't make Henkel putting his hands over Dan Cole's eyes okay, and actually I'm quite happy with 6 weeks. I think that's fairly acceptable, because he didn't go out and poke him in the eyes. He didn't gouge him, but he did rake his hands over his eyes when he was trying to get himself out of the headlock, which you can't do. So 6 weeks. 6 weeks for me is pretty fair. I would have liked to have known what Cole was doing, because I think he was up to some fairly nasty business there as well. It's a shame. It means we're probably not going to see Henko again for Glasgow. depending how it goes over the next couple of weeks. Because he's off to Brief at the end of the season, and he's been a huge player for Glasgow for the last couple of seasons. So it's a shame for it to come to an end that way. But, we've spoken about the law trials and stuff, and, people getting used to things that you can or can't do. Everybody knows you can't put your hands around somebody's eyes, like whether you mean it or whether you actually get them in the eye or not. You can't do that. You've never been able to do it. It's a fairly acceptable 6 weeks, I would say.
Should there be a mechanism where, like, if you commit a foul so egregious, you're automatically assigned to Montpellier?
Well, the thing is, I'm surprised he hasn't been signed for them. But it's a weird one because Allan, it's something that we haven't seen for some time. Is what I would probably class an old school foul play manoeuvre. We may see it regularly in Pro D2, but up in the Northern Hemisphere and in the UK and in Scotland and in the URC, a gouge or a rake across the face is not something, and you wonder what was going through Henko Ventner's mind.
I think Dan Coles' arms was roughly what was going through Henko Ventner's mind. That was part of the problem. But I think he was trying to get himself out. I think he grabbed at something and sort of pushed his hand across. Again, I'm with Jonny. I think 6 weeks seems about right, and it is a shame it's how it's ended. But that would have been a red card in the 70s.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what was going through his mind was probably Eben Etzebeth did this to me in full view of about 15 cameras and got away with it, so maybe I'll get away with it too. But
well, this isn't South Africa. But anyway, but so that's us for the free to air part of the pod. If you've liked what you've heard or seen, we do move over to the Patreon side of things now, where we can speak a little bit looser, and we can discuss a little bit more about Glasgow, Edinburgh, and obviously the Scotland women's upcoming match against Italy. So if you want to listen to that, or you want to listen to continual extra bits and pieces for myself, or just support what we do and help us out, you can go to, I think it's www.scottishrugbypodcast.com. Is it .com? I think it's .com. And you can get our Patreon link and pay us a little bit of money a month or for the year, and get access to the extra content that we produce. It just gets to the point now where I've had a couple of beers and it's been a long day. To say thank you very much to Jonny McGinty. Thank you very much to Allan McDonald. And thanks for travelling all this way over the sea to David Lawrence, the Scrum. Thanks.
Just came across the ocean, and boy, are my arms tired.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to you all for listening.
Patreon friends, bear with us because we're going to kill this stream and put up another one. So give me 2 seconds for editing purposes. We will be back.
I may take a quick comfort break anyway.
I love the way Allan went